Good morning, everyone. About 2 years ago, it's a little less than 2 years because I think 2 years is marked at the turn of this year. I told Pastor Kabibi that there's something that happens to people as they grow older. And, they begin to recognize that they're in the senior category. I think in this country, only 3.4% of the population is above the age of 60 years old or something. And, the numbers diminish. My numbers may be a little off because it's a while since I've looked at those numbers, but I think it's about 6.4 are above the age of 60. And as they become fewer and fewer, they come to church, they don't see their own age mates and such, and they feel a little, distant and separated from the others. And especially in light of the fact, and you probably know this and maybe you don't. Hi, Nancy, how are you? I haven't seen you in how many years? It's so good to see you today. But you probably haven't seen this, but post-COVID, who can guess what the average age of Kenya now is? Janice, would you know? No, it's not 19. Let's see who else I can ask who would know this. Mazia Kapita, I think you deal with these sorts of demographics and such. Would you know what the average age of Kenya is? 15. No, it's not 15. It actually, before COVID, it was 19.7. And after COVID, it dropped down to 18.5. We are a country of teenagers, my dear people, and you are the ancients and the relics. Have you noticed how there is no radio station in this country that is speaking to you? The music they play and the talk they have on radio is all very teenish and dirty, and I can never stand it. So if you're like me, you probably listen to BBC. Because there's intellectual stuff there. I can't stand Kenyan radio, okay? I listen to BBC, and if it's not, if there's nothing there, then I turn to music. But it's because, guys, for those of us who are 50 plus, for those of us who are 60 plus, you are a vanishing, generation. And nobody's trying to sell anything to you anymore, and all the marketing is for the demographic of about, 17 years to about 30 years. That's who they're trying to catch. Especially in light of the fact that, have you noticed how our population is growing rapidly? We're going to double in population by the year 2050, okay? Some of you will make it to 2050. Some of us won't, okay? And by then, this population will be about 100 million people. And we are a vanishing generation, and nobody's trying to reach us, speak to us, and etc. So when you come to church, the people you find there are young. I don't know how many of you were at Nairobi Chapel last Sunday. Okay? Some of you were, okay? I loved it. I loved the music, but I had to recover for 2 days after that. It was like a workout. It was like a gym, okay? And I think to myself, I don't know I can do this for much longer. But so we sat down at a table with Pastor Nick after the service. We were having lunch together, and we were talking about, the service and etc. And, he was a bit worried. And I told him, Pastor Nick, if you try and reach my generation, you become a dying church. Because I'm not at the center of, the generations of Kenya. Really, the people you're trying to reach is Kenya as it is, which is 18.5 years. So when you have a lot of, I don't know, sometimes what I, as a man of 63, turning 64 now, what I sometimes feel is childishness, up front, and the dancing is like, little teenagers and etc. And I'm trying to go down because Shetani Shindwe, and once I go down, I have to sit down. I can't get up again. And I told him, Nick, don't feel bad about that. You reach the next generation. We have the gospel. You reach the next generation. We'll be okay. We'll be okay. We'll do okay. So about 2 years ago, I asked Pastor Kabibi, I'd like you to begin to attend to the needs of those who are over 50. Because when they come to chapel, they probably find it more and more difficult to identify with what's going on. And it's really exciting from the age of my children. But for me, the sound is too loud, there's too much dancing and too much activity and, etc., etc. I want you to attend. I want you to attend to those who are 50 and over. And, don't feel badly if you see that these people are sort of disappearing from your congregation. We'll take care of them. Now, guys, here's the thing. As I spoke with Kabibi, I recognized that you guys were the teenagers 30 years ago. I met Mcharu here today, and I don't know how he got in, but, I think it's a white beard that he has. He was a university student when I first went to the chapel. And now he's in this group. And it's been 30 years. And we're where we are now. And what a joy it was to come today and find so many people that I haven't seen in a long time. And what good fellowship, even sitting around the table. I may not know everybody around the table. I met Dr. Sarah from Uganda at the table today. And it's just good to be with my age mates and to enjoy fellowship and talking together and maybe sharing our experiences and where we've been, how far we've come, and etc. What a beautiful thing it was. But you were the teenagers 30 years ago that we were reaching. We've never been here before as a church. The Anglicans and the Presbyterians have figured it out. They have Mothers Union. They have, all these... the Men's Fellowship, Women's Guild, and etc. We've never been here before. And so, in a sense, you're the pioneers who are cutting the path for the generations that come after us. And in another 30 years when, we have gone to be with the Lord, the foundations you lay today as a first generation at this point will become the building in which others who come after us live in. And so this is momentous, our gathering together. And I'm praying that something beautiful will come out of this. And that we would have, in a sense, built the next chapter of the chapel, which is how we take care of those who are, quote-unquote, senior citizens. Okay? Now, nobody likes the name senior citizen. I do because I get caught by the police a lot, and so they respond to my white hairs and they call me senior citizen. Then it's a good name. Otherwise, any other time, it's not a good name. So let me tell you some funny things. There are two funny stories. One is last night I went on the web, and I looked for synonyms for, the elderly or, senior citizens, trying to look for a name that we can call ourselves, because nobody wants to be called senior citizen. I want to give you a list of the names I came across. Patriarchs. Is that a good name? Okay. Geezers. Here's another one. Ancients. Okay. Oldies. Grannies. Grandame. Okay. It's more French than anything. Pensioners. And the venerable. I couldn't find a single name. I couldn't find a single name that is honorable for this generation. So I want to give you a challenge, okay? We're not going to be Mothers Union, and we're not going to be Women's Guild, and we're not going to be the Men's Fellowship. What do we call ourselves? Because we also want an identity. Okay? Pardon? OGs. What does that mean? So you're going to have a bit of homework. Somebody find us a name. Somebody find us a name, okay? I thought one name that I would wear proudly is that you are the generation that built Nairobi Chapel. And maybe we should be the builders. Okay? Yeah, legacy, maybe. But you are that generation. And I think we're at a crossroads now where you may wonder, do I have a place anymore at the chapel? Do I continue attending? Will I drift back, in my case, to the Anglican Church because that's where I came from? And they have many elderly people, and so I'll feel comfortable and at home there. What do I do? What do I do? And we are at a crossroads. But I want to challenge us to continue to build chapel as only we can build. Because we're in a season chapel has never been before. And you are those men and women who built what we have today, but can build the next chapter or the next phase for us. Now, let me tell you a funny story, okay? I got a call about, 3 weeks ago, and somebody, it wasn't a call, it was a WhatsApp, and somebody called Jackie O wrote and said, Pastor Bishop Oscar, a group of my friends and I would like to come and see you. And that's all she wrote. And I thought this was Jackie Othoro. So I said, but of course, Jackie, it's been such a long time since we were together. Let me give you a date and let's get together. And she said, we can meet during the week. It doesn't have to be a weekend, which is busy for you. So I told her, yeah, come, we'll meet. And then, as we continued to talk, I began to think, is this Jackie Othoro? Is this not Jackie Othoro? And it turned out it was not Jackie Othoro, it was a Jackie O. Okay, same, And I thought to myself, now I've given away an appointment for somebody I don't know. I don't even know where they're coming from because they didn't tell me too much. And I'm too embarrassed to say, by the way, I don't know who you are. Cancel. And so I said, okay, hi Viru, let's go ahead and let's have the meeting. So they told me, what day can you give us during the week? I told them a Wednesday afternoon. And they said, there's 7 of us who want to come and see you. And I said, okay, and my wife was away and etc. So I said, come, we'll meet. And so they did come. And there were all sorts of people. One told me that she goes to FEM. Another one told me she comes from Deliverance Church. There was an Anglican there. There was, a couple of other churches, Pentecostal churches and such. I knew none of them. I had not met any of them before. And now they're in my home and we're sitting... So I can't reverse a clock, so be brave about it and, welcome them. And so we sat down and I told them, okay, I was told you wanted to come and see me. I don't know what that is about. You have the agenda. Tell me what it is. And this is what they told me. In 2017, you preached a series called Prison Break. When the first one of those 7 heard the series, she listened to the first 4 sermons and started taking notes. And she passed it on to a friend of hers, the second person who was in the group. And she listened to the sermons from something like 10 o'clock at night until 6 o'clock in the morning, all of them at one go. And then she sat down again and listened to them again. And she started passing them on to her friends. And they told me, it's been 5 years since you preached that sermon. We decided that we were going to listen to everything you taught and we were going to do everything you said. And I kid you not, Pastor, like you said in the sermon, by the 2nd year we were out of debt and some of us had been in a really bad situation. And by the 5th year, we are now wealthy. I bought a house, etc., etc. They really amazed me because, one of them said, our children were in private schools, okay? Two couples say this. Our children were in private schools. When we listened to you and you said that you should not live on more than 60%, the only way we could get that 60%, because we were determined to do what you said, was to take our children out of the private schools and to take them to public schools. And we did. And we moved out of Nairobi, and one of them said she lives in Banana. She and her husband live in Banana, and they're happy there. Their rent fell from something like, I think it was something like 80,000 to 15,000. And they said within 2 years we're out of debt. And within 5 years, we now own property. And then another one told me, you told us to find 7 passive income avenues. I now have 5. And those 5 bring more money into my bank account than my salary does. She works with the Kenyan government as a diplomat in Angola, okay? They bring more money into my account than my salary does. And today, if the government let me go, I'm sorted, I'm okay, okay? And so I'm listening to these stories and I'm thinking, these are like the 10 lepers. Only one came back to say thank you. Okay. and as we're listening to these stories and my wife joined us after a while, I turned to my wife and said, I think we need to listen to those sermons. So anyway, we finished our time and they said, thank you, thank you, thank you. We took a few photographs and they left. Now they had come with the really big shiondos because they wanted to say thank you. And they brought fruit juice and they brought, watermelon and all the other things that people bring. There were two heavy shiondos. But at the bottom of the basket was adult diapers. Oh, I tell you. I thought I should come with them today and give them to my friend Akatsa. He's older than me, so how dare they think that I'm using... I was wondering, should I be offended? Should I call them and ask them, Nini Hivumeleta? What are these things? Then I thought, okay, maybe they're for my wife. Maybe they're not for me. Oh, my. So anybody who needs adult diapers, I have a pair of them if you want, because I don't know what to do with them. But that's our future, by the way, even as we laugh. So 4 years ago, actually now 5 years ago, my wife and I sold up our property here in Karen and moved out to Lukenya. And we've been there for the last 5 years. And when we went to Lukenya, everybody in Lukenya was very happy about our going there because you may know this, you may not, but there are a lot of properties there that have been bought by Chapelites. Because many years ago, Tim Mahinda went and bought, huge acreage, subdivided it, and started selling it to his friends. And it's become a community now, okay? And many Chapelites have bought, going back about 30 years, 20 years, 25 years, have bought properties there that they thought this will be a good retirement place for me when the time comes for me to move out of the city and etc. So we went and bought property out there and moved there. When I went, the biggest plea that I heard over and over again is, we're so happy you're here because now you can begin a church for us. We don't have a church. And indeed, many of the people in Green Park Estate and out in Lukenya did not used to go to church on Sunday because Nairobi was very far away. The expressway hadn't been done. It would sometimes take us 2 hours to get into Nairobi. And so even I was in a crisis. Where do I go? Now, we have a church in Machakos, so I started attending there, okay? But people pleaded with me to begin a church. And now we now have a church, a branch in Green Park, just at the Sundowner Hotel. But now recognizing I had left the chapel and was now out here in the country looking for a church, here's a surprising thing. I wanted a church that would be a community and not a crowd. I wanted a church that sang slower songs and less active ones. I didn't want to go to the gym every Sunday morning, okay? I wanted more depth in the teaching. I mean, when at the chapel they stand up and talk about how to find a wife, been there, done that, and that's not my story now. Can you talk to me about the issues I face now? And there are many, okay, that I face at this age that nobody knows about. The aches and the pains, the joints, all these sorts of things, the fear of falling, all these sorts of things are our reality, okay? The need for exercise and whatever else comes with old age, okay? And I wanted a place where there was more depth in teaching and where that was more word-focused. I wanted deeper fellowship because the reality is, and we could talk about, numbers, but the reality is that we're entering the last phase of our lives. When I asked Pastor Kabibi to start something for this generation, I made sure I picked a man who is, considerably younger than me because he'll have to dispatch me. And if I took up this job, I'll go before I've dispatched anyone. In fact, I watched his wife come in today and I thought, can we start presenting your IDs or birth certificates so that we can tell whether you belong here? Shiro, when we were kids, I knew Shiro's family, okay, the Kabeberis, okay? And we're in class with David Kabeberi. And he had a sister who was, she was beautiful, okay? Who was about my age, I think probably a year or two younger. Shiro was a little girl in the house who got sent around, okay? And now she's grown up and etc. But I don't think Shiro, where is Shiro? I saw her somewhere here. I don't think you qualify for this fellowship of 50 and above. But you're the ones who are going to dispatch us, Pastor Kabibi, when that time comes, because we'll go before you. And so I looked for a man who was younger than me, and yet a man who can understand the challenges of this generation. I wanted a pastor who can understand where I am. And so not a young person, but somebody who's older. I wanted a band of brothers to walk with for the rest of my life. The same bunch of people until the day the Lord calls me. I remember a friend of ours, my wife and I have a friend called Lucy Njoroge, and she retired from, I don't know which bank it was. I think it was now CBA. I think it used to be CBA, pardon? NIC. And when she retired, we're talking with her once and asked her, what's the hardest thing about retirement? And she said, I have no friends. And she said, all my friends were the people I worked with forever, because she had been with NIC from the beginning of her career. And so she had something like 30 years with NIC. And when I left the office, I thought I had friends. But nobody calls me. There's nobody to talk to. My phone never rings. And she said, for me, this has been the hardest thing. My workmates were my friends, but when I left, they moved on. They were just workmates. I remember having this conversation with Kenny Kiara, who's here with us today. And Ken told me the same thing, that your phone never rings after you retire. And you sort yourself out, you have no friends. But I want a place, even a church, where I meet with my friends on a regular basis. And church gives me the excuse to find all my friends. I wish we were a congregation together, just the way we are today. Oh man, that would be so much fun. That's what I wanted. I was willing to have longer meetings, even longer services, for the fun of it and for the fact that I'd be with friends. And so Sunday becomes a time where you gather, you worship, you listen to the word, but can we do lunch after? Can we go into the afternoon? Can we just spend time together? Because where are you going anyway? But here's something else I wanted. I still want to be significant in my service to the Lord. I'm not done with that chapter. And my greatest fear of a church made up of the people here is that it can very quickly become a club where we focus on ourselves and enjoying ourselves and being together as friends, and there is no kingdom eternal output except that we have fun together. I wanted a church that, yes, my friends are there and my age mates are there, but I want a place where we're also continuing to be significant for the sake of the kingdom. I have a deep desire to become more mature in Christ. Now that in some senses, the busy energy of my youthfulness is now behind me. And so I really want to become mature in the Lord. I really want to spend time in His Word. I want to read deep books together with others who have a passion for God. This is what my heart was hungry for. And I imagined that many of you are in the same place. And so I tasked Pastor Kabibi, please begin something for this generation. And we've not been here before, but we can learn. And we'll make our mistakes because, we're sort of fixing the car as it goes down the road, as we drive down the road. And there are things we don't even know that are going to be a reality that we'll face because we are that builders generation or the pioneers, and we discover things as they happen. Unlike the ones who will come behind us and find our forefathers established these things, and now the journey is so much easier for us. Okay? What happens to people when they grow older? Let me just walk us through and hopefully help us understand some of the challenges you're facing. I now teach that there are 5 levels of growth in the Christian walk. And the first level, I'll go through this quickly because I really am due to preach a sermon on this. And I have for those like Mike Agengo at Lavington, I preached 3 weeks talking about spiritual formation and spiritual maturity. The first stage of growth is new believer. And the Bible talks about it. You are babes in Christ. Paul admonishes, I think it's a Corinthians, he says, by now you should be eating meat, but you're still drinking milk. You're not growing, guys. You are stunted in your growth and you're much further behind than you should be. The first stage of spiritual maturity or spiritual formation is as a new believer. A new believer is excited about their faith like a little child, running all over the place, discovering everything, tasting everything. They don't know what is good for you. They don't know what can kill your faith, heresy and ill teaching. They just are excited to have known Christ. And all of us went through that stage. And oftentimes it takes maybe about 15 years. And so if you came to Christ say at the age of 20, it's around the age of 32, 35 that you begin to settle down in your faith, and now you know a little more. Like a child growing up, you're no longer a child. You have now reached those teenage years. And the second stage of growth is where you go through spiritual formation and discipleship. Okay, for those of you who attended with the navigators, they took your hand, they walked with you, they helped you memorize scripture, you started building in the disciplines of the Christian life, prayer and fasting and tithing and Bible study and quiet time and small group fellowship. All these are the disciplines that sustain your faith. And by the time you've been a Christian about 10 years, you're hungry for more than just a hoi and, running around excited about everything. Who's the latest, greatest in Nairobi? Which church should I be attending because I hear things are happening there? People are falling over, slain by the Spirit. Let's go there and see what this is about. But you get over that and you're hungry for more. And you're entering those adolescent years where you now understand things a little better. And you know what childishness is, but you want to grow. And so you become you start going for discipleship lessons. This is an important phase, like teenage years. It helps you discover your new identity in Christ. And it helps you discover the foundation on which your faith is built. And when people don't go through that second stage, it will, in a sense, plague them for the rest of their life because the building was never given a solid foundation. It's a very, very important stage. But the time comes maybe about 10, 15 years later. So if you accepted the Lord at the age of 20, okay, you're 35 by the time you're entering that stage, and then you become something like, 45, maybe coming on towards 50. You enter the third stage. And the third stage is really the builder's phase. It is the stage where you work for the Lord. It is a stage where you volunteer, you give leadership, you're involved in, helping others grow, you're involved in running the ministries of the church, you're involved in some Christian NGO, and you're giving back from your faith. And you give and you give. And some of you have served as elders, others of you have served, in Sunday school, and you have trained others after you, and etc., etc. And you're getting to your 55 and such by the time you're ready to move on to the next phase. But two things happen in this third phase. Most people do not know that there is a fourth phase. They think the third phase is a destination. And they think they've arrived. I am now mature. You're far from it. But they feel I'm now mature. I have served. I know my faith. I was given a good foundation. I was involved in the work of ministry. I have raised up others. I've been an elder in the church. What more is there? And unfortunately, the church doesn't answer that question. Because most churches do not know that there is a fourth phase. And so when you ask, I'm hungry for more. What do? I want to grow. The answer that the church will typically give you is serve more. And you say, but it's not service I'm looking for. I want intimacy with God. And they say, well, it will come as a result of service. So do more, run more, build more, start more, and get involved more and more and more and more and more and more and more. And you do all this, but it's not quenching the thirst in your heart. And by now you are 55 years, you're coming on to 60 years, and more isn't it. So you know what tends to happen to people at that age? They begin to recede back, away from the more, away from service. they volunteer less. They don't show up as much because they feel a hunger in their heart, but they don't know what to do with it. And it's not about more. And so that hunger and the calling they feel in their heart causes them to go and look for more. So they go and join the Pentecostal church hoping it will give them the more they're looking for. And the Pentecostal church says, serve and do more. So they drift from there and they go back to their roots, to the Presbyterian church, or they go back to the Anglican church. But even there, they don't find what they're looking for. So they go to the last station before you enter the wilderness, which is virtual. Watching services virtually. How many of you are there? And what happens with virtual church is this, okay? When you are a virtual church Christian, there is no engagement. There is no accountability. Nobody really knows what's going on in your life. Nobody knows whether you're still walking with the Lord. There is a slow drift as you become lazy about, when it's Sunday service, you have to get up and go. But when it's virtual, you can always watch it in the evening or maybe tomorrow, or maybe, Saturday. I'm tired. And little by little, like a planet that has lost its, what is it called? Its orbit. You start swinging out further and further and further away. And oftentimes for men, it doesn't end well. Men in their later years tend to drift away from Christ. The women don't. The women stick together because the women know how to look out for fellowship. The men are the problem. As they come into the retirement years, first of all, they start chokozering their wife. You're always going out. What are these two fellowships you're going for? You leave me here all alone. And then they sit in front of the fire while the wife has a life. Okay? But the men don't. And they slowly drift out of orbit and eventually they lose their faith. The passion and the drive they had when they were young, for many men, is not there anymore when they're older. There's a lack of community. If you're not going to church and, rubbing shoulders with others who know the Lord, there's a lack of community. And your world begins to shrink as you grow older. And then there's a loss to the church. Because as I will say in just a moment, there is so much you and this generation and I can give to the church. We are immensely wealthy, and I'm not talking about money. That too, but I'm not talking about money. You probably heard this because it's often quoted, and I'll sort of burst a bubble when I finish reading it. An extensive study published in the New England Journal of Medicine in the USA found that at age 60, you reach the top of your potential, and this continues into your 80s. The most productive age in human life is between 60 and 70 years of age. The second most productive stage in human beings is from 70 to 80 years of age. The third most productive is 50 to 60. The average age of Nobel Prize winners is 62 years. The average age of presidents of prominent companies in the world is 63 years. The average age of pastors of the 100 largest churches in the USA is 71 years. The average age of the popes is 76 years. This tells us in a way that it has been determined that the best years of your life are between 60 and 80 years. Therefore, this study concluded, if you are between 60 and 70 or 70 and 80, you are in the best season of your life. And if it's 70 and 80, in the second best season of your life. Okay? Now, that is actually fake news. Nobody can find this New England, Journal of Medicine. where the article supposedly quotes. And even I went on the web looking for it. And that's when you discover, there was no such journal, and the journal reference number given doesn't actually exist. Okay? So it's actually fake news. But, we choose to believe it because we're not done yet, okay? We're not done yet. But here's why I think, even though the article may not be actually a study done and be actually true, I think it is right. Because I divide life into 7 seasons. Okay? And the first season is your season of education when you're a child and a teenager. Your second season is your season of exposure when you begin to work. You're still, about 25 years, 30 years and such. Your third season, you're somewhere between 35 and 50. It's your season of impact. This is where you really work, you create wealth, you have the children, you're parenting. All around you, you are bringing to life things, and it's your season of impact. Your fourth season is somewhere between 50 and 65. And it is your season of expansion. Now you grow things. The little organization you started that sort of got on its feet when you were 40 years old, by the time you're 50 has become a big organization, and now you're growing it into some sort of conglomerate, okay? Big enterprise and such. That tends to happen post-50. Somewhere between 65 and 80, that is your year of impartation. This is where you take up other young people and you become the wind in their sails. You raise them up, you pass on wisdom to them, and you help them become what they can be. And then your last season, post-80, is the years when you are the sage. People come to consult you and to ask for wisdom and for your advice. Okay, so 7 seasons. But here's the thing about the 7 seasons, okay? What do the elderly bring when they're post-50, post-60, going on towards 80? Now you are rich. You are rich in experience because you've seen a lot and you've learned a lot. You're rich in credibility because you're known and people know that you have built things and that you have weathered the vicissitudes of time. You have huge credibility. You have power and authority. You say and it comes into existence. You have power of position, oftentimes, power of government, oftentimes power of networks. You have power and authority. You have funds because you have built wealth by the time you get to this stage. You have networks. You know everybody else. You remember that time when you were about 40, 50, 60 years, when every office you went to, you said, you're the one who's here. I mean, you knew this guy in high school and you parted ways, and now you're finding the top of all the CEOs and companies and government offices are your age mates. My claim to fame is that President Kenyatta drove my sister's wedding car. He was a driver when my sister was getting married. Now, you have funds, you have networks, you have very deep-seated convictions that you can pass on to the next generation because of what you have seen. You have wisdom, where wisdom is more than just knowledge. You have influence, because you can say things and people listen and they go and do. When somebody like, for me, who can I give as an example? Let me give Elon Musk, okay? When Elon Musk gives a business principle, articles start appearing in the New York Times and the Washington Post and etc. When Bwana Madzia Kapita says the same thing, people say, Nini he? Who is this guy? And even I have come to learn this. Let me tell you a secret, okay? Don't let my secret out of the bag. Okay, you're my age mate, so you understand this. When I preach, part of the power of my preaching is the influence I carry. Because I have been a believer and a consistent believer for many years. So people listen to me, not because I have these great pearls of wisdom per se, but because you've been there, done that, and you've been consistent and you're going steadily. Whatever you say has to be wisdom. And you know what I'm talking about. So you have influence. You have skills. that came out of your year of service. Skills that are transferable, translatable from engineering to general oversight and whatever it is. Because at the end of the day, it all breaks down to a couple of principles in terms of leadership. So you have skills. You have time that is being wasted hitting a ball that is going nowhere. For those of you who play golf. I mean, think about it. You hit a ball and then you go after it. You hit the ball and go after it. Go and take out your stress and those other issues somewhere else. Leave the ball alone. But what you don't have is what the young people have. You don't have the energy. You don't have the passion that they have. You don't take the risks the way that young people take risks. I laugh at the fact that people ask me, how are you planting churches in New Zealand and such? I tell them, I tell the young men, we have an opportunity to plant a church in New Zealand. Who wants to go? And me. Now I'm too clever to want to go to New Zealand. We were in Canada just last month because we're going to start planting churches in Canada. And, I preached at one church. And it was a good-sized church, about 150 people, beautiful building in a quaint little town. It wasn't in a big town, okay? It was a quaint little town. And I preached my heart out, and after the service, their pastor had resigned about 4 or 5 months ago. They haven't been able to find a pastor. So after I preached, 2 members of the congregation came and said, can you become our pastor? And I thought, Canada, wow, But then I thought, winter, And I'm too clever to migrate to Canada at this age with my old bones, knowing the winter is coming. But the young people, me. They'll go wherever. They'll take the risks. They will begin again. They will do whatever it takes. Because that is the gift of youth. You and I don't have that anymore. We're too clever to jump into those risky endeavors, okay? And they have the freedom, often unencumbered, willing to, at the drop of a hat. We're talking about how we're going to train the people we send to Canada. And one of us, said in the discussion, a year is too short. By the time they've said their goodbyes. And we said, tell a young person we're sending you to America to plant a church. They won't even say goodbyes. When is the plane ticket? Can we go tomorrow? There are no goodbyes. They're ready to go at the drop of a hat. But we are rich in our generation. Oftentimes, however, our generation is put out to pasture. We're done. And nobody consults us anymore. Even though we have all this wealth. Can we bring this wealth into the purposes and into the kingdom of the cross? This is why we've gathered you together. The church needs the young people because they'll go out on the mission endeavors, they'll go to the unreached people groups, they'll sleep on the floor. I used to sleep in a truck working with Diguna in Nyahururu, spreading the gospel there. And it was not a big deal. Wherever I lay down, I slept, perfectly. Now I have, a memory foam, very comfortable bed. I still can't sleep at night. I need all the help I can. And initially, in the early days, we used to go to the chemist and tell them, can I have some Valium? And they just give you, and then the government locked down on that, okay? And so, occasionally I will use an antihistamine that, makes you sleepy. But even when I take it, I don't sleep more than 4 or 5 hours. I slept at 1 o'clock last night. I was up at 6 o'clock this morning. And that was a good night's sleep, 5 hours. What can the elderly bring? I think they bring a well-seasoned faith. I think they bring an understanding of the changing world and the need to desperately reach the next generations before we exit. I think our generation can bring a spirit of grace and not criticize the young. It disheartens the young people. We're given a church in Australia, Sydney. We have a church in Sydney. And we're given a church that was made up of Greek-speaking people, the first generations of Greek who went to Australia. Everybody spoke Greek and no English. And we were told, we cannot find a pastor for this congregation. Would you take over? And so we sent our pastor from Kileleshwa Community Church Pastor Ken Kamau, we sent him there to be the pastor. So he had to find a translator who could translate from English to Greek. But he said yes to that opportunity because he was after the younger generations. And so he started reaching out to the young people and to the children of the Greek people who were in the church. The first response of the Greek people who were there, the elderly people who only spoke Greek, is they started complaining about all these children running around and, babies, making noise and crying in the service. And, my hearing aid can't hear properly when there's, when there's a baby crying around me. And they really complained. I think we can do better than that. Instead of criticizing the church, we can bring the wisdom of our years of service in terms of organizational structure, in terms of, decision making. Let me tell you this because I think we all need to hear this. And when I first ever heard it, I thought, Lord, that's right. Nobody invites you to their wedding when you're getting married, Banakiru. Nobody invites you to your nobody invites you to a wedding so that you can come and criticize their bride. The church is the bride of Christ. He did not invite you into his kingdom so that you can sit there, the church, these people are, they're Sherlocks and, they are terrible and, he did not invite you to criticize his bride. You may not like what the bride is wearing, but she's not your bride. She is Christ's bride. When you go to a wedding, the shoes were not appropriate. I would not have worn those shoes myself. Ladies, since you measure everything, you are not invited to criticize the bride. You are invited to celebrate the wedding. And we have been invited into the kingdom of God, not to criticize the church, but to celebrate salvation and the fact that this is Christ's bride. This you can do, guys. Do not criticize the church. Make the difference and be the change maker. With this in mind, where then do we go as chapel? I think first is to recognize this is the start of something new. We've not been here before. And we need you on point. I think number 2 is to say this. Put the structures in place to reach to this generation because more and more and more will follow us. There has never been this generation in our congregation. Now we who were young university students, that age group, when the chapel started, we are now this age group. So put the structures in place. Help us, myself included, to inscribe into our DNA how we do this. And yes, I can play a role in this. But guys, at 1:00 at night last night, I was thinking of my span of responsibility as the bishop. And, the churches that I look after and the many complex issues I'm having to deal with. From HR to people to finances to keeping churches alive to finding replacements to sending out missionaries and all these things. And I can't do this. And Kabibi can't do this. But you can. And together we can. Integrate, as seniors, all your gifts into the ethos of the church in a country of teenagers. Because that's what our country is. They need us to be mentors and spiritual leaders and people they can look up to. Become this for the sake of the kingdom. I spoke once at the chapel and I said, guys, the truth of the matter is, Gong Road is not trying to reach the 60-year-olds. And they don't cater their worship and etc. for the 60-year-olds. This is why you never sing hymns. Okay? They're trying to reach the 18 to 30-year-olds. And one of the members came and told me, I'm leaving this church. If this church isn't trying to reach me, then what I'm doing here? I wanted to tell them, 30 years ago, you were reached. We sang your songs. In fact, I thought, where is Mildred? You should have told us to sing, the old songs. I would have prompted one. This land is your land. This land is my land. From Kilimanjaro. You remember those songs? There you go. You will never hear that sung at the Nairobi Chapel. Those were year songs. Those were year hymnology. Music and the culture, the hymnology of music turns over every 10 years. And so I tell, my pastors, if I come to your church and I feel comfortable, I'm going to fire you. Because you're reaching me. My name is already in the book of life. You don't have to worry about me. Reach the ones who are not yet reached. Use the forms and the language of the Gen Xers or whatever they are now. Okay, because we're almost done out of the alphabet. I don't know what they'll become next. But use their hymnology, use their songs, and reach them. Don't worry about me. My faith is secure and my name is in the book of life. Those are the people that we need to become. We live for the sake of the gospel to pass this truth to the next generation and not to become a club. And this is what you can become. So, let me put some things before you as I come to a conclusion and call up Pastor Kabibi, okay? Somebody asked, are we trying to minister to the elderly or to hold a service for the elderly? I think we're trying to do both. That's what I'd like Pastor Kabibi to do. To minister to us because we too have needs. I need a pastor. I want to feel the presence of my pastor. When I am challenged with the challenges of life, and it's going to be illness, and it's going to be loss, and it's going to be, death, and those sorts of things, I want a pastor besides me. And I tell Kabibi, you're my pastor. I may be the bishop, but you're my pastor. Care for me and watch over me. I need a pastor. You need a pastor. So we do want to minister to us who are older. But we also need to, hold a service that we are familiar with. And I want to set some things in place as a way forward. I wish everyone here would take 2 or 3 younger leaders under their wing and be the wind in their sails. The young people desperately need a spiritual father or a spiritual mother who can say, well done. I pray for you every day. It puts backbone in them to know that I have an older person who I can go to in my brokenness and they will receive me and care for me out of the wisdom of their years. I wish each of us could make a commitment to pick a younger person and to begin to speak life into the next generation. They will soon be us, but by then we'll be gone. We don't want there to ever be, there grew up a generation who did not know the Lord. We have to transfer our faith to that next generation. I wish each of us would enable the planting of a church that is to the older people. Now, some of you here are very rooted in your church. Mike Agengo is very Lavington. Mike, don't leave Lavington. Lavington needs you because Lavington needs to be an intergenerational church, okay? But others of us are on virtual attendance. I want to call that away. That is not Christian, my friends. It was for a season, but COVID iliisha. In case you never got the memo. Move on, guys. Attend church. But when you attend, help in the work of the church. We have a huge, property on Gong Road. We now have our title deeds back because they were returned by government. But we have a journey ahead of us, which is to build a permanent structure there. And because we own, up to 100 or 200 feet up in the air, we want to capitalize on what is ours and build up. We're not going to build surface area. We want to build towers so that we can get as much, property value as possible. But where are the architects who can do that sort of big project? They're here. Where are the financiers who can help us understand what it will take? They're here. Where are the quantity surveyors? They're here. And because you're at the stage you are in life, you don't need a bribe, you don't need shortcuts, you don't need, you can do this. We have a young lawyer who serves us at the chapel, and we tell him, we need this license done. Do you know that guy goes and sits in the office the whole day? After 3 or 4 days, he says, sasa wewe kijana, ni nini nimekuleta huku? And he says, I'm still waiting for my license. And they actually process it. He gets things done because of his persistence and patience. We can do this. But if you check out and you do virtual, I wish each of us would expend our energy and wealth and make this a season to leave behind a legacy, a mark for the kingdom of Christ. Maybe it hasn't been a good journey for you spiritually. Leave a mark. You still have time. Make the difference. You still have time. So I want to call you to several things. And number one is this. In November, I have invited Pastor Kabibi to come and preach at this church. This is where the current church meets currently, okay? I've invited Pastor Cosma, sorry, not Pastor, but Mr. Cosma Gatere to come and preach. Can I invite any of you who are not regularly attending church right now in November to come and attend November here? Okay, all those on virtual, all those who have just dropped away, okay, come for a month, okay? The church that we have here is not a big church. It's not a big church. We have probably about, I don't know, maybe about 100 adults in this church, in this building. And so it can accommodate a lot more. It's not going to be big and noisy and filled with youth and youthful energy like Ngong Road is, because you go there and you feel lost, okay? If you come, then you're coming to friends and you're coming, to a smaller community. And so it's easy to connect, okay? And I want this to be an intergenerational church, that we have young people and that we have children and that we are a family together. This isn't a club. And it's not just about the oldies, coming together, the geriatrics or whatever other name you give them, coming together. It's about church and Christian community. So I want to invite you in November. We're going to try and shape the services in November to be both inclusive of the younger generations. We have the young families and some teenagers and etc. with we who are older. And we can develop community here. And we can begin to, group up and team up into groups that meet on a regular basis, especially for the men, because they're in so much more trouble than the women who do it anyway, with or without help, okay? So that we can begin to be a fellowship together, okay? And I want to invite you to the last service in November. Attend the services in November. But I'm going to ask Pastor Kabibi if it is at all possible, and I haven't discussed this with him, so he may need to modulate on these dates. If it is at all possible, on the last Sunday of November, the 26th of November, if he would, have lunch for us, this group, after the service. Okay? Now there will be a test at the door. What did the pastor speak about today? We hear whether you are in charge or you are just coming for a free lunch, And for this group, because after you have attended in November, would like to sit down together and would like you to tell us, are we on track? Are we going in the right direction? Who can help? What do we do? How do we change so that it is inclusive and your needs are being felt and etc.? Today we can't, talk about this. I wish there was a forum where we could just say, this is what my heart desires. That will be the opportunity to say, I still desire a certain sort of fellowship. Can we get into small groups and those sorts of things? That will be a special afternoon, after the service. So that having attended the service, you say, we're still struggling with sound. Yes, those are on hearing aids. We can't hear the sound properly. There's too many echoes and etc., etc. Okay, so I want to invite you in November to come. Cosma is teaching. Pastor Kabibi will be leading the service. I've asked him to be the pastor of this church because we've just had a change in the leadership of this church. And because he was looking for a place, I'd asked him, can you find a place between Gong and Kilimani where we can begin a service for this generation? And when this church, when we recognize that we need to make a change in leadership here, I invited Pastor Kabibi to actually take over these premises because we're already paying for them and make it a place of fellowship like we're having today and a place where, people can come from as far as Gong, as far as, Kilimani. People like Godwin Wagongu has come all the way from Kiambu, and I came from Lukenya, and if we were to have a fellowship that meets once a month, I would be there, because I need this. And so it can be a place of fellowship, and I'm going to ask that on the 26th of November, come for the lunch. Now, we have people here like Mr. Katza and Zaya, and I believe Mbide, who are now in the Lavington Church. And very, very involved. I was talking with your pastor, Pastor Faith, and she just loves it that you're there. And the work you're doing and how you're helping the congregation and teaching classes and things like that. Don't come to this, Bwana Zaya, okay? We're not, pardon? Even the lunch. Because I don't want them to pull out of Lavington and attend in November so that they come and tell us their wisdom in the service. Let them stay there. Okay? Now, when we talk about a fellowship, and I wish we would, I can't attend any one church because I'm at Gong Road now, and then I'm going to the new church in Green Park, and then I'm in Malindi and Mombasa with the churches there. We have 6 churches there, and etc., etc. I never attend one church, consistently. I'm all over the place, and I've accepted that's my lot. But it means I don't have fellowship in terms of people that I can talk with and be accountable to and such. And if a fellowship did start for this generation, even in this church, beyond the Sunday service, I would love to come and be a part of that because I need this, okay? But Akatsa, don't leave that now. If we do have a fellowship, come for that because we're your friends. But don't leave the church because they need you, okay? And you know how they say, okay, don't take offense anyone. This is a bishop speaking. When you pile up manure in a heap, it stinks. But manure serves its best purpose when it's spread out. So we want to spread you out, Bwana Katsa. Don't come and pile up here. Okay. Yeah. Let me show you who the pastors of this church are. If I could ask the pastors, I think we have 4 of them here, including Pastor Kabibi. Where are the other 2? Are they still here? Where is Haggai? Yes, come on up. And where is Patrick? He must be, well, come on up. Pastors, yes, come on. We have 5 pastors. We have 5 pastors here, okay? Pardon? Should we call him away? Okay, call him. Okay. One of them is not here today, and so I can't introduce you to her. Yeah, but of course you know Pastor Kabibi. I have asked Pastor Kabibi to be the pastor of this church so that he can particularly focus on and even teach the other churches what he learns here, how we minister to the older generations in all our churches around the country. And so in a very real sense, this is like a trisex, okay? And so I've asked him to be the pastor in charge here at Karen, and to be into the future. As I've talked with him, I've told him, Kabibi, you serve until you're 80 years old. At 80 years old, we'll make you a member and we'll appoint a pastor thing. But, walk with us in the years that lie ahead of us and be the pastor of this generation, okay? I have also asked my wife to stand alongside Pastor Kabibi as a lady, as an older, mature woman, so that she has a special focus on the ladies who are in this generation and age group. And she's leaving the 2 things that she's loved and been doing, which is a children's ministry and, walking with the children's pastors, and then discipleship and the people that she disciples very much in the way that the navigators disciple. And so she does that with particularly Daystar students where we live. But I've asked her, I want to assign you to a church. And I want you and Kabibi in that generation to be the 2 pastors we look up to, as a man who will be the pastor particularly to the men folk, but to all of us, and as a lady who has an attentive ear, particularly to the ladies and to all of us, okay? And then we have Pastor Haggai here. Pastor Haggai here is the pastor of the teenagers in this church. I think you have about, if I'm not wrong, is it how many? 30? About 30 teenagers, okay? And he's responsible for the teenagers. We have one other pastor that you saw this morning, but you probably didn't recognize him. He's called Pastor Patrick, and he is the one, pardon? Yeah, they're practicing for tomorrow. He's responsible for the worship and for the services, and so he will be an important part to this conversation of how do you make a worship service inclusive of those who have a different hymnology, okay? And so this will be their challenge as a team. And then we have one other pastor called Pastor Milka, who is responsible for the children's ministry, and so she's not even here because there weren't going to be children here today. And these 5 are the team who make up the pastorate. There's one other person, Caroline. Can I call you to come up? Let people know you. This is Caroline, and she is Pastor Kabibi's assistant and the office assistant here. And so she's an important person to know, because if you ever call in and need to catch Kabibi and you just can't, then catch Caroline and she'll help you, okay? And that's Caroline. And she's just fresh and new to the team, but we're very grateful and thankful that she can join us. And so a team of 6 right now who are full-time, focused on this, and they will lead us. We have about 100 adults in this congregation, and so there's plenty of space. When you deck out this place with chairs, there's plenty of space, so you won't lack that. It's a beautiful property. We've gotten to know the owner of the property. They've been very gracious and kind to us, and we're trying to sign a long-term contract so that we're here for the next 10, 15 plus years. And so I want to invite you to this. In November especially, come. Don't do virtual in November, come. And if you find at the end of that time, there's still issues you need to put on the table, that's where Pastor Kabibi will be and these others. If you need to call any of them, you probably already have their numbers because they've been long-term with us. With that, let me leave it at that and invite Pastor Kabibi now to lead us.
Thank you. Let's appreciate the bishop. Let's appreciate Bishop Oscar for... No, I'm calling Shiro, sorry. I thought, I need my dinner today. So I need to introduce to you. I think many times people ask, where is your wife? And I don't know, many of you know Shiro. How many here know Shiro? Kidanga? Wow. Okay, wonderful. Yeah. This is Shiro. And Shiro, we've been married for the last 31 years. And Shiro has worked as a teacher for many, many years. I think possibly over 30 as a teacher. And she's currently still working as a teacher and a chaplain at the Rusinga School. And she's basically my greatest support. I needed to say that because of my future, because of my meals. So whenever you see her, please treat her well, for my sake. Asante sana. Thank you, Shiro. Thank you. You can have a seat. I think I cannot add anything more to what Bishop has said. I think he has said it so well, and has said it so clearly in terms of the way forward. And I just want to say to you again, thank you very much for honoring this invitation. And because it's possible that we do not have some contacts of some of you. In case we do not have your telephone number, in case you registered and you didn't register with your telephone number, can you please see Caroline at the back? Caroline will be able to take your contact because we want to keep in touch with you. The second thing, as you've been told by the bishop, is I want to give you an invitation to Nairobi Chapel Karen. Okay? And especially to those of us who've been online. And we always welcome you as online. But now we want to welcome you to Nairobi Chapel Karen. We meet here on Sundays from 10 a.m. to 12 noon. This is a beautiful facility, as Bishop has mentioned. But you do not know that we do have a swimming pool. To the right. So that in case your grandchildren are visiting with you, they can actually on that day come swimming. Because there is actually a swimming pool after the function. And in case, so we do have that, and we have very good facilities, and we want to invite you. As Bishop has said, in the month of November, please come. And we walk this journey. So that's the invitation to you. The other invitation that I would want to make to us as a group is that as we walk this journey, it's good to walk with others for the sake of accountability. And we want to ask, I know that many of you are in what we call e-groups or small groups or cell groups, but there may be some of you here who are not in a small group. And if you register and write and contact Caroline and tell her you would want to join a group, we will make arrangements, because we do not want you to leave from this function, and possibly as you go, we would like to start actually engaging with some of you right away. So please let us know, one, if you're not in a group, that we can be able to put you in a group. But secondly, you can also let us know how we can get in touch with you, or how we can get in touch with you as a group. We are available. Again, you may have questions from today's meeting. We actually wanted to do some activities, but because of time and we had promised to release you by around 10, we want to close this meeting at this point. But in case you have any feedback or any question, please, you can be able to get either in touch with me, or you can get in touch with Reverend B, or you can leave your message with Caroline, and we will get back to you. Again, thank you for coming. May I ask that we rise to our feet so that we can close in a word of prayer.